This is executive producer Scott Gabrielson, and this is me, director Jason Allard. And in 2013, we combined our filmmaking powers to make My Old School, a documentary about the largest abandoned school in New England. This project was very important to the two of us because we actually both attended this school. Scott in 1972 and me in 2003. We were actually the first crew granted access to the school after it closed in 2009, and we went through its halls in 2012 to film for the project. So I wanted to share the entire process that went into making this documentary, including actually getting access to the building, filming inside the building, and gathering interviews with former teachers, students, staff, and city officials, and the fundraising campaign we led on Kickstarter that allowed us to premiere the movie in the new Woonsocket High School. Once it premiered at the high school, it was actually picked up by Rhode Island PBS as part of an annual fundraiser where myself and Scott were on TV discussing the making of the film and some of our favorite stories from that process.
Where are we? We're at WSBE, Rhode Island Public Television.
So throughout this video, I'm going to use footage of the two of us on air during that fundraiser talking about My Old School. As far as getting access to the school, this was the part where we thought was going to be impossible. The project started out with us looking in through some of the windows while working on another project and seeing that everything was left the way it was on the last day of school. So we figured, okay, there's no way anyone has gotten into this building, and there's certainly no way that we're going to get into this building. So we made a pitch to Woonsocket City Council and said we want to gain access for historical purposes, to tell stories, and to just see what it's like at this point. Fortunately, they granted us access.
What would you, Scott and Jason, what would you say was the most exciting part of putting this documentary together?
I think it has to be when we first got permission from the authorities, the school department people. When we first walked in the building, it was a cold day. It seems like no one had been in there for years.
I'm Scott. Nice to meet you.
Cameron. How do you feel, Eric?
How do you feel?
How do you feel?
I'm excited. It's gonna be a good time.
Well, you're in charge after this, boss. You go ahead. So your back seat has the camera big bag and the Canon, and everything else is the way you loaded it here, except for the extra set of lights I put in. All right.
And it was almost like an exploratory mission. We set up a base camp in the old auditorium.
Along with the white angles. Oh.
And the building is so large, it took, hours of exploration. We originally took some of our crew and we just split up with cameras and said, shoot as much footage as you can. We'll all come back here and take a look at it later. I think the first day was the most exciting for me.
Yeah.
Because I hadn't been in that building since 1972. So it was the first time I was back walking those corridors since I was there as a high school student. So that was probably my most exciting moment.
The school was built in 1915. It was just a single structure at that time. And then in the 1930s, there were multiple additions made to the school, including an auditorium, a gym, and then 2 extra wings on the other side of the school. So it really makes for kind of a confusing layout. There's really no rhyme or reason to it. There's staircases to nowhere.
It's like how it works.
There's secret hallways, different passages, and rooms where there shouldn't be rooms, and doorways that lead to rooms you wouldn't even think were there. Whenever you go into a school, you expect to hear kids playing, classes going on. It was dead silent.
Yeah, right.
And there were pianos throughout the school, so the crew, I had them split up. So I went off with 1 camera, the crew went off with 2 other cameras. And so since there were pianos throughout the school, everyone was always twinkling on the pianos. So I'd be on the first floor, I could hear like this creepy piano coming from the 4th floor. And exactly how you see it in the film is exactly how it was walking through there. It was just quiet, it was dark, it was cold.
Yeah.
It was unreal.
I would have never guessed to come down here.
See the sun?
What does it say?
Caution, asbestos hazard. Do not disturb without proper training and equipment. We shouldn't even be down there.
All right. Hey. It's all dark in there. This is where they come in.
At one point, we actually found the roof access.
Who do you know takes selfies on Woonsocket Middle School? Yeah, they do on the edge too. Oh wow, see the life on the edge, I'm banging on my feet.
Taking video right now. Just get video of us. I already got some of you.
They just can't see me. No, please. Yeah, if you do, at least be cool about it.
Wait till I hit record. So we got up there and you can see there's one shot where I'm looking down from a higher platform at one of my friends, Suthi, who has the main camera, and I told him to get a shot of the side of the building, but he's leaning over and it's easily a 50 to 60 foot drop to the ground after. So looking back, and when I see this footage, I'm thinking, if we were to go back, there's no way I would ask him to ever get that shot again. But it did actually come out good in the final film.
There's so much history that whenever the decision was to build, obviously because the building probably needed more costly to repair it, than it would be to build a new facility for the high school and the middle school. But there's so much history that can get lost in by making a transition to a new facility, that you guys have really preserved the history of this facility.
One of the other things I found interesting is when we went in, there were some lockers that had been ripped off the walls, so there were old bare walls, and there were people's names that I recognized from my father's class on the football team with him. Like Vinny Gumbat, class of 42, football, Woonsocket High School, and they write it all out. And then even the mayor said you see some graffiti that Bob loves Brenda, and you wonder, since 1942, is Bob and Brenda still together?
Yeah.
That there was so much of that memorabilia that we had the ability to access, that even the kids who were there probably didn't know some of the stuff was behind these walls. Yeah. It was when some of the destruction or some of the reconditioning happening, when they started tearing things down, you saw like layers of history behind. Yeah. Like the old broadcast booth where they had the movies in the auditorium. There was lots of graffiti in there that went back to like the 30s.
There's writing on the blackboards while we were walking around from the students on that last day of school saying, "Goodbye, old school, goodbye, Woonsocket Middle School." And it just reminded us of how much history is here, how many people walk through its hallways.
Still would be good.
Okay. And this box is the most stale you ever smell. Eric, come smell it. It's concentrated stale in this container.
It's still good.
Disgusting.
$5.
Probably the strangest place we visited in the school was underneath the main gym. It's almost like a skate park because the floor is so warped. It's just a bunch of hills rolling throughout on the wood. Underneath this gym are 2 locker rooms, and it's completely dark. And that's where I got some of the best photos inside the entire school. Desks and most of the equipment is still in the classrooms and strewn about the hallways. And the reason is because a lot of it is completely outdated. After the school closed, the administration tried to sell off a lot of the existing supplies.
Stuff worth many thousands, he says. A safe, slide projectors, overhead projectors, dictionaries, books, desks, water coolers and refrigerators plugged in, part of electric bills of $1,800 a month for an empty building.
When we were going out to purchase and build the new school buildings, we were told back then that they were going to use as much as they possibly could from the old building to save money going into the new school.
Has anyone told you that this stuff is unusable?
Well, the superintendent has said that there was no value left in the building.
Most of the books were published, their last published date is in the 1980s. So everything you see in this video, just remember, all the good stuff was already taken. This is just the leftovers.
Polaroid interview from my old school. Shirley Corriveau, class of 1955.
Class of 1965.
Yeah.
Okay, well, junior high.
Once we got access to go inside the school, the Woonsocket Call, local newspaper, did a small section on it, and then people from all over, all alumni started contacting us from as far back as class of 1938. And then once they started telling us those stories, that's when we knew, okay, we have something, we have a story to tell. And then it just took off from there. More people started contacting us, we gathered more footage. That was the driving force. We knew that we wanted to get those stories told, and this was our way to do it.
We gathered interviews with dozens of former students, staff, faculty, administrators, and city officials to trace the history of the school from its construction in 1915, its opening in 1919, and then ultimately until its closing in 2009.
This is the old Woonsocket Middle School. It was shut down last winter after a new middle school opened.
The old middle school building was becoming too difficult to manage as a middle school. It became the largest middle school in New England, 1,600 students. There were issues of building maintenance and keeping the boiler running, and everything about the building was becoming a problem in the sense of trying to educate students. And the city had sought out to find a way of building new middle schools and finally pulled it all together in a vote before the voters that approved the building of the new middle schools, and moved on to having a very modern and efficient campus. So we were very happy to do it at the time, but that was primarily the reason that it just couldn't function any longer efficiently as a middle school.
My old school premiered in front of a crowd of about 400 people in the new Woonsocket High School, and that was possible because of a successful Kickstarter campaign that went towards funding the premiere, purchasing merch, and getting a pressing of the DVDs made.
My Old School documentary, they all have the t-shirt on, and you can have the t-shirt too by calling that number. We're going to get back to the last segment of My Old School. Well, it's a wonderful documentary. We appreciate you, wanting to showcase it here on Rhode Island PBS. We hope that you guys continue to work together and produce something else. We've enjoyed having you here this evening. We've enjoyed watching My Old School. I can't wait to get a copy of the whole thing. Thank you very much for coming in and helping us out here at Rhode Island PBS.
Jason Allard, breaking news. Michael Cyril.
Hi, Ted Baxter here. Hi, Mayor.
Thank you everyone for watching. If you want to grab a copy of My Old School, you can head over to oldschoolwoonsocket.com. There's also a lot more photos, videos, and information about the film that I didn't include in this video. If you want to see my Abandoned from Above video series, where I visit historic, interesting, abandoned locations throughout New England, you can click this link to the playlist right here. If you have any questions, you can send me a message through my website, uncomsensemedia.com, through YouTube, through Instagram, or just send me an email. Thank you again.